Diamonds on my wrist when I step up on a diamond. Diamond, diamond, diamond. Diamond, diamond, diamonds on my wrist when I step up on a
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you live every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down 3 industry articles for you. The Freight Coach Morning Show is the flagship show on the Freight Coach Network, which we released last week. We are building a media company here, guys. We're coming for it. This is brought to you by transportation professionals for transportation professionals. There's no theory here. We're here to educate you on how to actually navigate through changing markets, as opposed to just putting graphs out there and pointing in a different direction and saying that everything's going to fall apart. Because although there might be market shifts, you guys, that doesn't mean that we stop. All right. That doesn't mean that we stop executing. And that's what it's all about here. Hey, this show is brought to you by my friends over at B-Hub. They are big believers in what we're doing over here at the Freight Coach Morning Show and the Freight Coach Network. And they are out here, and asset reallocation is the future. It is the present. It is what is going to help you navigate through these market shifts out there right now. So with their current offerings that they have, you guys, and again, you get paid to do this. All right. This isn't hey, move this trailer for us for free. You literally get paid $1,850 to move a brand new dry van from Salt Lake City, Utah area up to Delta, BC. And that is like load freight in that as well. So you get that money. This helps offset that fuel cost, which seems like it just isn't going to fucking slow down by any stretch of the imagination. And they also have them over in Paragould, Arkansas, which is Samantha Jones's backyard. Samantha Jones, good morning to you. And they also have them over in Glade Spring, Virginia, heading over there. And again, you guys get paid for this. And then they also have brand new dry vans down there in San Diego, California, looking to head up to Spokane, Washington, as well as over to Dallas. All right, Irving to be particular. But again, you get paid to do this, you guys. This helps offset some of these rising costs and everything else for you guys. So check them out, vhubapp.com. My friends, Xavier Campos and Stacy Steen, they'll be in the audience today. So you guys can hit them up direct or reach out to them on LinkedIn and everything else. And I got a very special guest for you guys today. LTL is not my strong suit. I didn't move a lot of it in my career. Yes, I understand how it works, but I have an LTL freight expert to come on and talk about this stuff. And we got something that we're going to bring up as well. So my LTL point of contact for everything is Mr. Gabe Pankin, and he's out of North Dakota. What's up, brother? How are you?
How's it going, everybody? Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the intro, man.
Absolutely, dude. We are ready to rock, and we got something exciting to say. So I'm just going to come out and say it right now. Gabe is officially going to be the LTL contributor on the Freight Coach Network. He has offered to work with me on this to provide all of his insight for all of you who are out there operating in this. So Gabe's going to be a part of the Freight Coach Network. I appreciate it a lot because Gabe knows a hell of a lot more about that stuff than I do. So that's what I do. I bring on those experts. All right. And Gabe is an expert in LTL. So what's up?
Dude, just living the dream out here in North Dakota. And I appreciate the intro, the kind words. I'm excited to be just even a small part of what you have going on. I think you're heading in the right direction. And when when we connected about this, it was an easy choice to see if I can add some value on the LTL. I really think your style of just like actually having done it and what's actually happening in the market rather than the conjecture is the same style I'm going to bring to LTL. And, I think it's going to be good.
No, that's exactly what we're going to do. Because again, you guys, like, I don't hide behind the fact that there's very real things that happen. All right. There are very real changes that go on, but that doesn't mean you fucking give up or look at a headline or hell, even take what I'm saying as gospel. Like, you need to do your own research. But frankly, you guys, we're in this industry. I've been in this industry for a very long time, as has Gabe, as have the other individuals who are going to be contributing to this, because we got to find solutions for our customers. When a market shifts, you can't, oh, sorry, well, fuck it, the market sucks. You'll be out the door, Yeah,
and you have to be able to try to see when that's coming. But really, the important thing is, what are you going to do to get to the other side of it? It's cyclical. Yeah. It always has been.
No, absolutely. Casey Sawyer, good morning. Bob Hazrati. I hope I pronounced your name right there, man.
It sounded right.
Samantha,
yep.
It's close. Samantha Bass, good morning. Joshua Breeze, what's up? Phoenix in the house. Sonny Sharma, good morning, Orange Shirt Gang. Here we go. We're up to day 53 of the Freight Coach tally of there being a facilities issue and a truck parking issue in this industry. And as always, you guys, I will stop talking about it when drivers stop sending me fucking DMs that are saying, hey, here's another facility for you. Hey, here's another problem. Because again, you guys, we're all about progress. All right. I don't do this for clicks. I'm not going to ever say, here's my vanity metrics. I just want to see progress. I want to see the traditional silos of this industry get fucking shattered and us actually make change for this industry as opposed to talking about it, And I say that because essentially up until the day my dad died, like nothing changed in this industry. He was a business owner for 40 years in this industry and nothing changed. All the issues that we're talking about today that are hot button, that are headline grabbing, same fucking problems back in the 70s and the 80s. So tell me how we're progressing. And that's just where I'm at with a lot of that shit, man. And then, ironically, where I get my national average for fuel, the website happens to be down. It's funny how EIA.gov, if you guys can tell, gov is the web domain there, is not working, but I got it from the AAA and it's up again. It's not fucking pretty. 581 a gallon is what the AAA is reporting of where the national average is at this week. And again, it's like, what can we do to help our drivers conserve fuel burn, looking into the APU aspect of things and putting it on there. Yes, it's an upfront investment, but it also saves in the long term. And that's what it is, man, is you're investing. It's like you own your own business, man. You invest in the future. So it's like the decisions you're making today as a leader of rocket shipping, the decisions you're making today are not geared toward how do I survive today? It's geared towards the future, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, no, we're only 2 years into this, so it is geared towards the future. I will say it's very difficult sometimes, especially with the way the conjecture has been happening, to not say, hey, revenue at all costs, take it all on, and we'll just make it happen. But we've actually had a couple of difficult conversations with clients that we've had to let go recently, and that's one of the toughest things to do in this market. But everything we do is an investment into the next 5-10 years. And we know that the next 2 years are probably going to be tougher than the last, right? As far as revenue and the ability to go get it. So
no, absolutely. And I mean, there's no denying that there's a market shift that is actively happening. But again, here's the reality, you guys. Someone's going to make some fucking money in this market shift in the downturn.
Yeah.
Just look at it that way. Is it going to be you or is it going to be your competition?
Are you going to clutch your purse or are you going to go attack? That's really the real problem there.
Dude, I'm all on offense right now. All of my clients that I'm working with, we're all on fucking offense. Everything on offense. Because I know the realities of what's going to happen, man. When these market shifts happen, when people start pushing down prices and everything else and trying to make an extra buck, the failure rates go through the fucking roof. That is what's going to happen if it's not already happening at scale. And you might get a little bit more runway because of the volatility of how the market has operated over the last couple of years. You might get a little runway, but my guess is that leash is going to be cut after probably July 15th. I think that's going to be the route around the time, because obviously the 4th of July freight is going to be moving. Holiday freight's going to be moving here. You'll see a little bit of an uptick, but then it's going to dive for a little bit in July and August, and then it creeps
the black hole of summer. Yeah,
exactly. And then it creeps back up around Labor Day there in September. But I think that's where you're going to see a lot of change. So if you're out there building the book of business right now, get in your customers and prospects' ears the right way. Like, don't fucking wear them out. But you guys know what I mean. Be present in these times, because their current network, if especially if there's somebody who is brought on and they know, like, if you guys don't think shippers know who's been taking advantage of them or not, you'll find out in probably like 5 weeks. If you think like, oh, I haven't done that, you'll find out in 5 weeks. Don't worry. It'll be out there. Matt Laird, not only down, but the EIA also changed their reporting guidelines. Yes, math is debatable, right? Like, you can debate math. Is that what it is?
It's 2022.
Exactly. 2 + 2 = 5. Laura goes on to say, I'm clutching my purse. That thing makes a great weapon. There we go. Ryline. That's right. Ryline. I apologize, Laura. All right. Well, let's get into the first article. This one was written by Craig Fuller at Freight Waves. A potential economic recession and the supply chain bullwhip are colliding. it goes on, it talks about what the bullwhip effect is, and it's a term used in supply chain circles to describe a scenario which temporary surges in retail demand are magnified and exaggerated by upstream manufacturers and suppliers. And then it shares their chart on there, and then it goes on to talk about before COVID, the ratio of containers per shipment was fairly static, and the two moved in tandem with each other. In the beginning of the summer of 2020, the container to shipment ratio exploded as big box retailers used their leverage to move more containers into their scheduled shipments. It does some breakdowns of it. Again, like, I'm a data nerd, so I take data from everything and look at it and break it down. I'm not a one source or one size fits all with it, because again, there's a lot of information out there, but it also brings up the fact that there's a lot of contradictory information that is out there, and it's all about how you're perceived. So it's like, when I look at an article like this, because it does go on to talk about how, some of the big box retailers are canceling orders or severely scaling back new production of product due to their inventory levels here in the United States. And again, I think, like, in my opinion, what we're seeing with the rising inventory levels, and I want you to speak on this because a lot of what you do, LTO is a major sector of this industry. So it's like, I see that just in time, last mile stuff. And I think that a lot of that they overbought in the anticipation of not knowing if there was going to be another shutdown. I think a lot of companies were like, fuck it, we can't not have product, so let's gamble and have more product than necessary. Again, this is just my brain on how I perceive this stuff.
Well, I think the big people, the big shippers as well they were able to do that. So they're like, hey, we can gamble a bit. And I know, like, there's some articles in the last couple of weeks that Target, kind of overdid it on inventory versus their actual increase in sales. But I don't think that the mid-sized shippers and businesses actually were able to even secure capacity. So I think it's a top of the barrel equation, and Target and Walmart are going to be fine. They'll figure out a way. So maybe there's conjecture that, container shipment ratio is going to drop, but that's because the biggest players are maybe pulling back. I think everybody else still wants to get inventory in. Yeah. And that's indicative by the tonnage was up in May in LTL and truckload. All of the carriers that I anticipated on the LTL side starting to give decreases and normalizing pricing, the 18 to 20% increases are still coming.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just them squeezing the last few drops out anymore. That was my opinion, and I do evolve my opinion pretty quickly in this market. I think they still have strong volumes. And so retail and manufacturing is still strong. E-commerce has maybe had a little bit of a tick, but it's because it's so dependent on consumer buying behavior and conjecture, whereas manufacturing is much more steady. And the carriers want manufacturing, so they're happy with this.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is it's like, I'm looking at a lot of this information, and you can see it, like, because it goes on to say about, the trucking market continues to weaken. It's concerning because mid-June, normally one of the hottest months in freight, which it is, the national spot index 7 rolling day average dropped from 207 to 196 a mile on June 20th. And, for me, it's just like it's just the reiterance that the spot market is a section of the industry. It's not the overwhelming majority of it. And then it's also the fact that with the amount of freight, the volume of freight hasn't dipped yet. And that's what I'm paying attention to more than anything, is the volume of freight is still up from like 2017, 2018 levels, even before that last dip that happened. So again, I'm not saying that there isn't a change happening. I'm just saying that there's still freight moving. So my overall concern isn't the sky is falling, fucking everything's falling apart. It's this is the time to dig your heels in and know your fixed costs, know what is going to keep you profitable during this market shift. And I know that there's going to be people who unfortunately are over leveraged.
If you have a burn rate right now, you are in trouble, right?
Yeah.
If you're not making money, you're in a bit of trouble. And as you saw, some of the big tech startups in this industry, and I won't name names, but some of the big ones are laying people off.
Yeah.
Because they were burning money. And so they said, hey, we can only burn so much, right? It's so foreign to me because I can only, like, the only way our business survives is if we profit every month.
Mine too. It's weird.
And so that's really how you're going to get through the next couple of, maybe a year, maybe two, however long it lasts.
Yeah. And, and here's the thing. It goes, there's a lot of talk about tender rejections. All right.
Yeah.
Tender rejections that they've dropped in the past week, hitting a new cycle low of 7.68%. And the trucking Tender rejections are an indicator of a trucking capacity conditions. Declining numbers indicate carriers are losing pricing power. I disagree with that. I think that tender rejections dropping mean that people, again, have higher contracted pricing. This is just based off of my very, very, very limited 5 truckload experience only in this industry. But I view it like this. They're not declining the rates because the contracted rate is at $3.50 a mile. And to their point above, the spot market on some lanes is $1.96. How the fuck would I would only accept the $3.50 a mile load. And then it's also, it goes on to say, like, for me, with tender rejections and how they're reported, say there's 10 carriers on the waterfall here. All right. And 4 of them reject the load. Is that 4 rejections or is that 1 rejection? I don't know how this data is reported. So to me,
so are you asking? Because I don't know the answer to that.
No,
so
I
are
know.
they not saying what that's based on?
I haven't found that. And again, I'm not saying that that's what they're reporting. Yeah. That's where my question is with data when I see this is a tender rejection counted as 1 rejected if 9 out of the 10 in the waterfall reject a load and the 10th one accepts it? Or is it 1 rejection in total? I don't know. So like that's where
it's important to know.
It is, but that's where the subjectiveness of data comes in my opinion. And again, I've only moved 3 truckloads in my career, so what do I know? But those are the answers that I want. And then furthermore, when you dig in deeper, again, I study lanes all the time when I work with my clients. This is kind of what I do, is I teach people how to read freight markets. And you look at a national average, again, subjective data, because I know some spot market lanes in the United States of America that my clients are running right now that are still over $3 a mile. Okay. So again, it's like, it's taking in your internal organization and the freight you're moving with your customers. I'm not saying any of this information is wrong or it's being painted in one direction or another. All I know is I need to know how this data is structured to accurately formulate an opinion on this. And also, furthermore, lane by lane breakdown is what you need to pay attention to. I don't go to my customer and I don't, when I bid out on an RFP, I don't say, hey, I'm only bidding $3.50 a mile on everything across the board. They'll fucking laugh you out of the bid cycle. You do it on a lane by lane basis. And again, average overall might be at that, but there are profitable lanes out there. That's what contributes into the tenders, contracted rates being, tenders aren't being rejected. Again, it's just my opinion on this. And, talks about the LTL, and you're like, and you said this in there, is that the LTL market has softened in certain sectors, but it's not, it's still holding strong with manufacturing. And that's what the carriers like, right?
Well, yeah. So the carriers during COVID and during the last 2 years were kind of forced to do more residential business, which is why rocket shipping exists, right? That's what we do. But they, just because e-commerce volumes dropped or certain sectors dropped, the carriers, it freed up capacity for them. They were over 100% capacity. So they're still operating at max profit, and they're moving the freight that they wanted to move anyways. And so like the tonnage was up for, Old Dominion, Saia, ABF, all of that in May. And I had put out some info on that. But going back to your point too, of like lanes and like, okay, some profitable lanes, some not, national average. It's also by sector and by product. So it's like consumer goods, they're not necessarily recession proof, but like people got to eat and drink. And so the LTL sector is fine there. High-end furniture, $5,000 dining tables, there was a dip, right? And so it's consumer behavior driven on LTL and truckload as well. And, a show like yours can kind of point people towards where the lanes and the type of products they might want to be moving over the next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That article is from FreightWaves. A potential economic recession and the supply chain bullwhip are colliding. It's furthermore, it's like when you're talking about that though, like you're talking about reefer freight, there's 3 different classifications on how you would price out a reefer load. Yeah. You're not going to price a frozen load of ice cream the same as a weather protect load of fucking flowers. You know what I mean? Like, so again, it's like this information, you guys, is it's not a one size fits all, cut and dry. Again, if you go in and bid a fresh or a temp controlled pricing on a frozen load, you'll fucking reject everything because you're highly underbid on it. Again, it's telling the whole story. All right. It's not
Yeah.
just a sector. Tell the whole story on how people can work with this shit.
I think one more thing about that article, Chris, was that the chart provided for containers per shipment ratio, they went back to, I think, 2017, and that's where the graph went to. But if everybody remembers, between 2016 and 2019, and there was a little bit of a dip in 2019, but it was mostly a growth cycle. So
Yeah.
everybody was growing, the economy was growing. So that ratio should make sense that it was the same and that they were keeping up with each other. The last 2 years have been up and down, and so the ratio should be off. That's my interpretation of that.
No, absolutely. And to talk, you've been bringing up tonnage a lot. Then the next article we're going to break down is actually from ttnews.com, and that tonnage jumped 3.7% in May.
For truckload, yeah.
Yeah, for truckload. And that's compared with last year's levels of 2021, making the 9th consecutive year-over-year gain and the largest since April of 2021, the ATA, American Trucking Association, announced. Their for-hire truck tonnage index equaled 117.1 last month compared to 113.3 a year ago. It also represented a 1.4% gain over that in April as well. For purposes, the index is 2015 equals 100. It goes on, their chief economist, Bob Costello, goes on to say the transition in the freight market continued in May, with the index hitting the second highest level since the pandemic started. The traditional spot market has slowed as freight softens, and the contracted carriers are backfilling any losses in freight with loads from shippers that are reducing spot market exposure. So the ATA is essentially saying that people are honoring their contracts right there. That in plain English, that's what that means.
Yeah, back to pre-pandemic almost.
Yeah, they're not rejecting loads, because why would you reject a contracted load at $3.50 and put it out and take a load at the spot market at $2? You wouldn't. Across the first 5 months of 2022, tonnage is up 2.7% compared to a year ago levels. And overall, the economic indicators that are important to trucking slowed in May, including retail sales, housing, and manufacturing output. And again, this is just to truckload information. Yeah. And like from your perspective, though, on the LTL world, are you seeing, because they said that retail, housing, and manufacturing slowed in May for truckload? What does that look like? Was that a spike in LTL because they're like, hey, we're not sending out 75% of a fucking truck anymore of retail goods. We are going to LTL it like we used to pre-pandemic of that, going back to their original business plan.
Yeah, I think that effect might be seen more in May and June than it would have been in March and April. And so I think we'll have to see where the data is on that. But that is one theory, is that, hey, there's less truckload because they're breaking it into LTL. And if the tonnage is still up for truckload, LTL should be fine. The only data I've seen is that for the actual trucking data for LTL was just what carriers released. And those numbers are always a little bit like, it's tough to read them. They each release them differently in their own profitabilities, and some release their OR, some don't. But all the LTL carriers, against what my gut was saying, have increased tonnage, have increased volumes and revenue in Q1.
No,
I don't, it didn't seem to make sense in my head, but I've been trying to be cogent to not just go by what I feel and what the consumer sentiment is, and then look at the numbers. And so I've seen a few sources on LinkedIn kind of point me in that right direction of like, hey, here's where the numbers are, and here's where buying behavior and credit card debt, all of that matters. LTL is going to probably slow down still, but I don't think it's falling off a cliff.
Yeah. Jason Miller's great, by the way. Because
Jason Miller would be one who just is not afraid to be like, hey, Gabe, I saw your post. You're wrong. Oh,
yeah.
Well, thank you. And I will watch your stuff now.
Dude, that's
awesome.
the thing.
I love it.
I love what he does, because it's like, at the end of the day, he's just providing information and putting his perspective out there. And, the guy's fucking smart. Like,
it's hard to read it. I have to read it 3 times to understand half of it.
I do too.
But I love it.
Too. I'm right there with you. And again, it's like when I'm looking at, data, when I see a lot of this stuff about tonnage is up, truckload, and everything else, I'm looking at, and this is just based off of the information I know of what happened over the last couple of years of them sending out a quote unquote full truckload with 10 pallets in it,
Yeah.
And now that is, hey, let's partial that out. So it's like, if I'm looking at that, like if you say like even 10% of their freight that they did that on last year now goes back to a 1 pick 2 drop load, because you found capacity to accommodate those style moves. I think that would be very indicative of how the market should be dropping then, right? Because that would technically be now 1 truckload instead of 2 truckloads. So you would see a dip. And
it goes back to how many tender rejections, or how many rejections equal 1 tender rejection, how many truckloads. Now it's 2 to 1. But also, I mean, that affects truckload volumes, but the partial capacity wasn't there, and it is now. And so it's not like we've got trucks sitting everywhere looking for freight, but there is capacity now. And so you can move it volume or partial.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And again, that one's from ttnews.com. Truck tonnage jumps 3.7% in May. The last one is also from Freight Waves, talking about the Biden administration seeks input on independent contractor definition.
Yeah.
And let me see here. Tim, dude, you need to connect with Tim. He's great. You can't do that on food and beverage or anything that requires a chain of custody. Yep. You open a can of worms with partial freight. Amen to that. Cross-contamination is fucking real, you guys. Let's see here. It goes on. The Biden administration has started the process to formulate a new definition of independent. Well, I don't know why we have to fucking change any definitions anymore.
Because the administrations had to undo something that the prior one did. That's what you have to do.
That's true. I will agree with their stance on that. For many workers, the misclassification does cause lost wages and benefits. I will say that is true. Unemployment insurance and workers' compensation coverage. It goes on. Labor attorneys have said that the definition is highly significant and generally sets the standard for most companies that want to avoid action brought against them. And it goes, we remain committed to ensuring that employees are recognized correctly when they are in fact employees so that they have the protections that the FLSA provides. I agree with that, but what I don't agree with is if somebody comes to you and says, I'm an independent contractor, don't force me to fucking classify as an employee.
Yeah. That's my whole world. Like I used to be a 1099. I didn't want to be a W-2.
Yeah.
There's advantages to it.
And I'll agree. Like, I thought it was a well-written article. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not a well-written article by any stretch of the imagination. It's very well written. What I don't like though, is the government trying to reclassify somebody's status if they don't have an opinion in that matter. I don't agree with that at all, because if I want to be a 1099, I'm going to be a fucking 1099 and you're not going to tell me any of that stuff. But there does need to be protections for those individuals who may be forced to be in a 1099 because the company doesn't want to fucking pay payroll taxes. And other things that they're talking
multiple
about.
Workers' comp, multiple different payroll taxes.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
No company wants to do that. And I employ people that are in five different states. And so I know that it's a headache, but if they especially, and I don't know the truckload side as well as you, obviously. So the 1099 drivers versus the dispatcher versus the whole system, I'm curious to see what situations they would want to be 1099 and this would impact them versus when they are getting taken advantage of.
I think that in my opinion, I want to see it clearly defined to, yes, hold those companies accountable that are forcing people to 1099 status when they should in fact be a W-2 employee. But what I don't want is anybody to lose their right to choose that I am an independent contractor. So like my dad, for example, he was a 1099. He owned his own trucking company. He was a leased owner operator. He did all of his own shit, but they didn't pay him benefits. They didn't pay him health insurance because, frankly, as he always put it, I don't want a fucking boss and I don't want to fucking answer to anybody. That was his mentality. That's why I wanted to be a 1099. I'm an independent contractor. He wanted to remain independent. And I feel like that's what it is. But somebody could also view that and be like, well, that owner operator who's leased on technically works for you over a certain percentage of the time. Therefore, they should be an employee. And I think that that's forced employment. And I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting one. This is not necessarily trucking related, but Uber and Lyft, like when Uber started, they, the debate between 1099 and employee on that, it was a benefit for Uber to not employ them, but it did allow drivers. Now you see cars all the time with a Uber sticker and a Lyft sticker because they're 1099 and they have the right to drive for both, which was that's the exact system that should be set up for the worker, right? They should be able to take advantage of the system, not Uber take advantage of them. So that's pretty good. If you guys are interested, there's plenty of articles about that battle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with every article, you guys, I put the links to the articles in the show notes on the podcast platform, as well as the YouTube channel, which all these replays are shown on and available almost immediately after the show. Because again, I want you guys to do your own research. I want you guys to formulate your own opinions on these things. I'm just bringing a different aspect to the table based off of my experience in life and everything else. And again, I've only moved 3 truckloads, so take it for what it's worth. And well, what was that, Tim? There are plenty of companies that are forcing dispatchers to be 1099. They treat them as employees with calls and reports, but script to yeah, absolutely. And I think like in that case, that's one of those things. If you're forcing an employee to be a 1099 to skirt the system, you need to be held accountable. So that's why I agree with the government structuring it in a way, but I also want there to be that clause that if that said employee is aware of that and wants to remain as independent status, they have the right to choose to be independent, because my opinion on is freedom over everything. So that being said, that's it for today, guys. Again, Gabe is going to be, you're going to see his face a lot more on this. You should have said you're welcome. But yeah, he's going to be the Freight Coach Network's LTL freight expert. And we're just going to continue to evolve and grow all this stuff out, because again, the Freight Coach Morning Show is the top morning show in transportation. Gabe, A, how do people find you? B, are you hiring right now? And C, put all that shit out there for people.
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's the best place. That's where I put most of my content. Also follow us on TikTok if you need some humor in your life and some sales and office culture life. And then we're always hiring the right people, hiring sales, hiring ops. We're still growing. We've got some good leadership positions right now, so we're paused on that, but we are always hiring sales and ops.
I love it. Reach out to Gabe, you guys. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. The Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, the flagship show on the Freight Coach Network, coming to you live every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. I appreciate you guys all so much, and we'll be talking to you soon.